Welcome to Empire State of Grind, a podcast about the people building the next wave of tech startups in and out of New York City. Please be advised that while the hosts of this podcast are practicing lawyers, some of the guests on this podcast may be clients of the hosts, and the information and content provided during this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice or as the positions or stances of the employers of any of the individuals.
Welcome to another episode of Empire State of Grind, the show where we learn about the people building the next wave of tech startups in and out of New York City. I'm your host, Aaron Fisher, and I'm really excited for today's episode, as our guest is both a friend and former Datadog colleague, Daniel Langer. Daniel is the co-founder of Trackstar, a company that provides a universal API for warehouse management systems. On today's episode, we'll learn about the problem Trackstar is solving, their pivot story, as well as lessons learned from Datadog and from their Y-Combinator batch experience. And of course, we're going to learn about Daniel's journey into tech and why this Midwestern boy now calls the Big Apple home. All right, welcome to another episode of Empire State of Grind. I'm Aaron Fisher, your host. I'm here with Daniel Langer, the co-founder of Trackstar. Daniel, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm great, man. So tell us a little bit about Trackstar and what the company does, your role, and then we tend to like to get a sense of like the size, either through the employee count or customer size or whatever.
Yeah, so Trackstar is a universal API for warehouse management systems. And I'll kind of unpack that. The easiest analogy is what Plaid did for banking, we're trying to do for the supply chain. So Plaid built a one-to-many system for connecting to banks, right? So when you go to Venmo or Cash App and you connect your bank, it's all through a company called Plaid. And there's a lot of banks out there, and so they made it easy for developers and companies to access banking data. And through a series of kind of serendipitous events that we can definitely dive into, my co-founder Jeremy and I basically uncovered that there's this huge fragmentation of supply chain systems, and particularly these warehouse management systems.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Building software on top of this data is very hard. And we said, what if we kind of took this model that Plaid did for banking and do it for the supply chain?
And this is like, just I guess so the audience understands, when you say all this data, it's shipping orders,
exactly.
your warehousing information, product lines.
So, across the country, across the world, there's hundreds of thousands of warehouses, right, that are housing the world's inventory. And powering that warehouse is something called a warehouse management system. And that piece of software keeps track of all the SKU counts, what's coming into the warehouse, what's left the warehouse, who ordered something from a Shopify website, and when does it need to get delivered by. All that information comes into this, I'm going to say a WMS, warehouse management system, comes into the WMS. And over the last, 50 years, hundreds of different WMS have come into the market.
Right.
Some are homegrown, some have been developed as white label WMS. And so there's hundreds of these different systems that keep track of inventory, order data, shipping data, returns data, and so forth. And so if you're a software company that is trying to access that data, let's say you're trying to build inventory forecasting software to sell to D2C brands. You're going to have to go connect to all the different brands you're trying to sell, connect to their warehouse to get access to their data. And that's really hard, right? There's hundreds of these different systems. They're fragmented. Some are new, some are old.
Right, and most weren't even developed with solving this problem in mind, or sharing the data.
Yes. So we make that all easy. We figure out how to integrate with all of them, and then you as a software company connect to us once, and you are integrated with all of the different warehouse systems that we have.
Oh, that's cool. So you can say, hey, I'm using this new vendor to process returns, send the data back to the warehouse so I know what my inventory looks like.
And you just make a call to Trackstar to do that. So instead of having to figure out, how do I do returns with WMSA or WMSB, or how do I get inventory from WMSA or WMSB? You just call Trackstar, get inventory, or Trackstar, create return, and we go figure out how to do it to the end system.
Cool. I'm going to ask maybe a dumb or obvious question, but like, what was this a unique problem for this industry? I would think no. There's tons of others. So why did you choose this one?
There's a lot of them. There's companies that are doing this for HR systems.
Yeah, exactly.
And CRMs. There's a ton of them. We, like I kind of mentioned, stumbled upon this problem. So a couple years ago, we pivoted into this, I should say. Like we're a pivot story.
You were what, selling T-shirts out of your garage or something?
Yeah, exactly. Back in, oh man, wow. I would say about 3 years ago now, my still co-founder, who've been together this whole time, we were working on a different product. We were actually building like a Datadog for e-commerce kind of thing. So I used to work at Datadog, so we know each other. And we were trying to bring this idea of monitoring and alerting and sell an alerting product to people that were running brands. So what we did was we connect to like a brand storefront and their marketing tools and all those things. And we'd say, hey, your checkout flow isn't working, or you have like emails you're sending out that have broken links, or you have these landing pages that aren't working and things like that. And, we were kind of catching some things, but that part wasn't super mission critical, we learned. Like the pain wasn't there enough.
Right.
And then as we continue to talk to brands, they would say, a big challenge we're having is around like the operational side of our business, like the supply chain and inventory and all that. Can you help us with that? And we're like, oh, maybe. Like, what do we need to do to connect, like, to get that data? And they say, oh yeah, you have to connect to our warehouses. Like we use this 3PL, a third-party logistics provider that ships all of our stuff. We go connect to their warehouse and like get my data. And we talked to 20 brands and they named 20 different systems.
Right.
Like, oh, shit. We're gonna have to build 20 integrations just to like start supporting these brands.
It's funny, man.
We don't even know if this is a good thing for us to build. Maybe it is, but we don't want to do that. And actually, we joked. I like made a joke like, "Wow, someone should really build a plaid for supply chain. We'd be the first customer, but like, I don't want to." That sounds like a hard problem.
For those who don't know, Daniel's using plaid as the example because they're like extremely successful.
They are the like most successful universal API. But I literally joked. I'm like, I don't want to go do this. That's a lot of work. And we put it on the back burner and we kept working on V1 of Trackstar for another probably 5-6 months. And in the winter of 2023, this was now, we got into Y-Combinator. And early on in the batch, we got in knowing and telling our partners, like, we might pivot. Like, we're feeling like things are a little not quite up and to the right. And within like a few weeks of the batch, we knew like, yeah, we need to pivot. Like writing was on the wall. We weren't making progress. And at the time we hadn't revisited this plaid for supply chain thing. This was still like a joke we had made 6 months ago. And we kind of forgot about it. And a few weeks into the batch, Paul Graham, one of the founders of Y-Combinator, is giving a talk. And he says, raise your hand if you're pivoting. Half the batch raises their hand. 200 people there, half the hands go up.
Okay.
Like, oh shit, that feels good, right? We're not alone. And then he says, you probably already have thought of the idea that you're going to pivot into.
Interesting.
And he said, you're probably not doing it for one of 3 reasons. One, you think it's too hard. You don't want to do it. 2, you think it's crazy. Or 3, you don't know how it's going to make money. And he said, go back and think about any idea you had that labeled as one of those things and think about it a little. And sure enough, the next day, we were on the phone with someone talking about supply chain and inventory data. And I go, oh my God.
It's the same problem.
It's the same problem. And we ran away from it because it seems hard. But if it was easy, it would have been solved. Or
yeah,
no, it wouldn't be.
It's not worth solving, yeah.
And we go, holy shit. And so we start calling people, sending emails, basically just trying to find proof that people will pay for this. And, over the next couple of weeks, we found some anchor customers, and the rest is history. So let's do it. Not that we're like a wildly successful company, but, we have, dozens of paying customers, and we raised the seed round, and we're doing well.
The pivots aspect's really interesting to especially to me, because I think we've all heard this story of investors investing in people and
Yes.
not the product first. And from the outside, I think it sounds crazy, honestly.
What's funny is I partially agree with that, but I think partially I don't.
So naivety is good.
Well, it's not. I think the part that I agree with is if you have domain expertise, that gives you a huge advantage, right? Like if I were to go to try to solve any problem, like if I don't know if I'm trying to go build another medical records company, I would get destroyed for a long time because I don't know anything about it. So if you worked at Epic or Anthem or whatever, you have a leg up. But I think that is where there's an advantage. But I don't think that my experience.
You're just humble, man.
I don't know. Part of me is also I think part of me is and we can edit this if this is something you don't want me to say, but Datadog was easy.
Because you had a good product to work on.
The product sold itself. It built itself as a product manager. I just talked to customers. They were, giving me lists of things they wanted because the product market fit was so strong. So it's funny because it almost.
I do know what you're saying on this regard.
I didn't. It's not that I didn't have to try.
No, but you're set up for success.
I was set up for success by the years of work that had already come before. And so
the way I look at it and how I tell other people now is it's weird for me, right? I flipped from in-house work to outside. Outside, I kind of have to sell myself. I never had to do that before. And what I realize is it's just what sets me apart is literally just the experience I have. And what I do say is, look, a place like Datadog that's so successful gets you an amount of experience in areas you cannot get somewhere that isn't that successful.
Yeah.
Right? I've had to negotiate with the biggest companies on the planet. Not because I'm the best negotiator, because we had a really great product that every company wanted to buy. But that made me a great negotiator because I was able to get all that experience.
And it's a very different muscle, building something from scratch.
100%. Yeah. My problem there was managing how to get all these deals done. You know how many companies kill for that opportunity? Yeah.
I would kill for that. Yeah.
But if you have that problem, here's the flip side of it. There's not as many people with experience with it because it's so rare. So it's that's the part worth noting to the outside world because they're impressed by it because it's hard to come by. That's always what I say. At least for me, that's what you're getting with me is experience that it's going to be hard to find someone else with that experience. All right, so let's take a step back a little bit. We have an idea of what Trackstar does, the problem you're solving. Let's know a little bit about what stage you're at, how many employees. I like to give the audience an idea of how far along in the process is Trackstar.
Yeah, so like I said, we pivoted into this. We were in the winter 2023 Y-Combinator batch. So that was between January and April.
Oh, that's super recent.
2023.
Okay.
So that was a year and
18 months.
18 months.
Okay.
So we did Y-Combinator, and then last summer, so literally a year ago today, we raised a seed round, $2.5 million. And we are currently 6 people, mostly in New York, trying to be fully in New York moving forward. Like I said, we have a few dozen customers. We're between the seed and Series A world, and trying to march towards that as quickly and efficiently as we can.
That's cool. So you're pretty early, but you've got at least over that first hump of what problem are you solving?
Yeah, we know we're doing.
And you have some
we have a product that like really does what we're saying. We're helping like some really cool customers and actively, selling and growing and expanding.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, congrats. Since we're also friends here, I'm like happy for you.
Seeing how the sausage gets made. I think one of the things about being a founder is, some days you're thinking, oh, this is working, and then the next day I'm like, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time here. This is like never going to work. And like, the ups and downs are, people talk about it, but it is pretty, it is real.
But I think everyone is like that in their life in general, is like, what the hell am I doing every now and then? And other times you're super confident about it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Is it really different?
I think
you just feel more responsible.
I feel more responsible. I have employees, right? Like people that I, employ. And so I'm looking out for them and I want them to succeed. And there's, it's vulnerable building something and having the world scrutinize it, right? It took us 120 investor calls to raise our seed round. 120 no's before we got a yes or something. Brutal. Like I was demoralized for 3 months, how long it took, but we just kept going. And I think that's the only secret to building a company is if you can just keep going, it increases your odds of success. More than anything else, more than your background, more than anything else, is how long you can stay in the game.
I totally agree.
And that's pretty much the only indicator. I mean, yeah.
It's not the only one, but like the longer lifespan you have, the more chances you have at getting the yes when the probability is low.
YC's advice after the batches ended was stay alive. Just don't die. If their statistics or whatever say, if you're able to just keep the company alive for like a year after demo day, which is like the end of the batch, your odds of succeeding are so much higher just by not folding the company in a year.
Exactly. It's not because you figured something else out. It's just maybe someone else.
More data points, more at bats. So I think kind of circling back, like, it's just getting through the ups and downs.
We're going to take a short break to hear from one of our sponsors, but when we come back, we'll learn about Trackstar's origin story and Daniel's early career experience with Google and McKinsey, and a bit about both of our personal pivot stories, including our interview experiences at Datadog.
This episode is brought to you by NextGen Law. NextGen Law supports today's modern tech companies, bringing expertise in drafting and negotiating customer contracts and scaling of go-to-market legal functions. For more information, visit nextgenlaw.com. That's NextGenLaw with hyphens in between each word.com.
What made you want to start a company? Because like I wouldn't say I was surprised by any means. I feel like almost every PM I met at Datadog, I was like, eventually you're probably going to start your own thing. But like, did you always want to do it?
I don't know. I yes and no. I didn't think I was when I started this. Like when I started down the entrepreneurial path, I wasn't thinking about starting a company. The full origin story is my co-founder and I, we went to college together. We've been friends for a long time. And he was not someone that I ever thought I'd start a company with. You would ask him the same thing. He'd say the same thing. It was really serendipitous. He called me one day and he was interviewing at startups. And he called me to ask for equity advice because I was the guy who had some equity and knew what to ask. Yeah. And we started talking and I was asking about the companies he was interviewing at. And we were just talking more and more. And after, I don't know, a few weeks or months, I was like, fuck that. Like, don't go get a tiny percent at a company that like, you're lukewarm on. Like, let's just start our own company. Like it kind of just happened.
So we touched on this a bit before we started recording today, I said, like, I'm always happy Datadog wasn't my first company because the leadership there is exceptional. And watching them, it feels like, I don't know, could I do that? I had been in other places in small companies. I had ran other businesses where my takeaway from that was like, oh, these are just normal people doing stuff. I could totally, you know what I'm saying?
Have you seen, like, did you ever see early versions of Datadog?
No,
Like,
I'm sure it was terrible.
It was terrible, but it was, it took a lot of time and it was a lot of iterations. And the thing they did was they just kept going. They took a lot of time.
No, 100%. I guess what I'm saying is like one thing I'm trying to get through to the audience. Yes, there are exceptional people that start companies, and but they're pretty much normal before they start them, right?
Most founders are not the Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk,
exactly.
In the media, who have become bigger than themselves. They're everyday people, and you hear about those outliers because they are outliers. But most founders are not 20-something-year-olds geniuses
with no experience. Yeah.
They're in their 40s. The average founder is in their 40s. Again, this is a made-up statistic, but I know it's not like a 20-something-year-old is the average founder, right?
Without a doubt. So anyway, all right, we've talked a lot about the company and some heady stuff. Now we're talking about the people side. So let's learn a little bit about you. So correct me where I'm wrong, but I believe you're from Chicago or that area, right?
Yeah,
you're
Chicagoland area.
Chicagoland?
The outside. I'm from the suburbs.
All right, so you grew up in that area. Where did you go to college or grad school or whatever?
I went to UPenn.
Okay.
That's what brought me to the Northeast. And then...
and you went there for computer engineering?
Yeah. And then basically all my friends were moving to New York after school. And I'm like, I want to keep hanging with my friends.
Yeah.
Where else would I? I'm like,
were they from the New York?
A lot of people from the Northeast, but also a lot of my friends work in finance.
Okay.
And so, or they did. And so, they were going to be bankers. And so everyone goes to New York. I'm like, I want to go to New York.
New York is the big city.
Yeah.
That was basic because that is something we talked about. So what brought you to New York was basically
community.
My friends are going.
Community, yeah.
You didn't want to have to make new friends again.
Yeah, I the summer before my senior year, I interned at Google and I lived in SF. I did the SF thing and I realized that it was not for me.
How much like the movie was your experience?
The internship?
Yeah.
Honestly,
is that what it's called? The Owen Wilson?
The interns or the internship.
I think you're right.
There's a lot of truth to it. It was a great time. I mean, I worked on a tiny little piece of Google Maps and went into ball pits and rock climbed. And
did you get a feeling when you were there, like the difference between big companies and small or any?
Oh, it was, yeah. I mean, you work on at least as an entry level or intern, you work on a tiny little sliver of a $1 trillion machine. Yeah. But everyone has a different experience. Like it's so big, but it was a great time. I didn't fall in love with SF. I still don't love SF, but
East Coast, baby.
Yeah, exactly. But I gave it. I really went and I saw what it was like, and I thought, yeah, this is not for me. And
do you like the type of work or what?
SF?
No, the type of work you're doing at Google. It's one thing to know the area is not for you. It just, it's like the reason I'm asking the way I look is like when you get exposed to a large company, I feel like people either feel like that is for them to work their way up in some machine like that, or like this is frustrating as shit. I'm working on one button on this.
Yeah, I felt the latter. I was like, I don't want to climb a corporate ladder. I think it's great for some people, and for the most part, stability and you can make a lot of money.
Yes, Google pays well. That adage, like, oh, you should find something you're passionate about and make it your career.
Yeah.
It's like that works for like 5 to 10% of people that have some burning passion. Yeah. Like I've seen it with artists. There are definitely people who it's like, if you're never going to be happy with your life if you're not doing this thing that you have to do, whether it's make music or be an actor or whatever. For the most of us, it's trial and error.
Yeah. My wife's a writer and a filmmaker. And that's all she wants to do. She's known she wants to do
artists are the only ones where you're like, follow your passion because you're going to make everyone miserable.
I'm so jealous. I'm not fully jealous because I think it's hard to raise money for, a startup. It's easy compared to trying to raise money for anything artistic.
The part that you're jealous of, because this I can identify with, is you're jealous that you know what it is that you have to go out in the world and do to feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
And many of us don't figure it out for a long time.
I fully agree. I feel the same way.
Weird question. I don't know why. Obviously, like after I left Datadog, I had the opportunity to do a lot of reflecting. It was like made me see a lot of things. And one thing I noticed is I kind of like when things don't work out now, this is going to sound very, I don't know, either people identify with it or I sound like an idiot. But it's like, it's weird even to me now when it happens because I'm like, I can't believe I actually feel this way. But a lot of times, especially in business, when things don't work out, I literally look at it as like, it's probably getting out of the way for something better to come through. Because that's literally like the parts of my journey. There's so many times I've been wrong about I wanted this thing to happen and it didn't, and I was upset. And then looking back on it, like if it had happened, it would have prevented something else that I'm actually very happy it happened. Like Datadog's a perfect example of that for me.
I think my biggest example of that is for some reason after college, I worked at McKinsey.
Yeah, I was just about to ask, what did you do after college? Okay, perfect. So you go into consulting?
I go into consulting, and
What is your role there from a computer engineer?
Well, they love hiring engineers because we think like engineers. Like basically, you go to Penn.
Okay.
You get recruited by banks and consulting. Penn is like insanely pre-professional.
Okay.
And so I studied computer science. I entered at Google, and someone I knew who was a year older was working at McKinsey. It's like, hey, you should apply. Like this place is like changing the world. I didn't know what consulting was. Like I had no idea. But go to Penn. Oh, McKinsey is like the best company in the world. And I was like, all right, I'm influenced. Like I'll give it a sure. And I applied and I got an offer. And the whole time I'm like, I'm not quite sure like what this place actually does. But I couldn't turn it down.
I'm not sure anyone knows.
Everyone in my life was like, you have to work at McKinsey. McKinsey. It's 2015. Like,
that's a good story.
And so I'm like, all right, I guess I'll work here. Like, sure. And my background's computer science, like making things.
And this was in New York?
This was in New York.
So your first job in New York was at McKinsey right after college. So it checked the boxes too. You get to hang out with your friends and stuff.
Exactly. But then I would say within like a month of working there, I was like, oh no, I've made a huge mistake. Like Job from Arrested Development. Like I made a terrible mistake.
Month is quick.
I mean, I'm like, what am I doing? Like I'm an engineer. I like building things. Like I'm making slide decks about reorging sales or to like fire people or like streamline. I'm like, what is this? Anyway, I make it around 8 months and I happened to stumble upon this company called Datadog. And I barely knew what it was doing.
Wow, really? I didn't know this.
Yeah, this was in like...
Yeah, what year was this?
This was March of 2016.
Okay, so we joined the same year. I joined November of 2016.
Yeah. I literally reached out to... I saw there was like a PM role. I wanted to be a PM. I don't know when I knew I wanted to be a PM.
For those lawyers,
product manager.
Yeah.
Because part of me is like, I don't, I like tech, but I don't want to code full time. We can talk about my thoughts on that.
Ironically, I do think you're a perfect fit for it.
I actually think I wish I had been an engineer for more.
Longer first?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But anyway, so I reach out, recruiter, I get an interview, and part of the reason I think I got the job is because I was at McKinsey. It really impressed Amit.
100%. I was actually going to say, so one thing I like to do on the show, I had this thought with another guest, but we didn't do it, is these like check-ins. So like something we both, all right, we both joined in 2016. What was your interview experience like? Mine was kind of like,
I still remember
crazy.
it.
Yeah, of course.
I met with Mark Weissman.
Okay. Friend of the pod.
The nicest person. So I was like, this guy's great.
The sweetest man on earth.
And then I had like a 2-on-1 interview with 2 engineers. And I just remember they were asking me about the differences in like using AWS versus GCP and Azure. And I don't know if I answered well or not. Maybe I interviewed with another PM, and then I was in the office, but Amit wasn't there. He was in Boston. So I had like a Zoom interview with Amit in the office. And I just remember kind of McKinsey coming up, and I don't even remember what we talked about, but
so Amit was the chief product officer and was insanely sharp. And I think what separates him from like a traditional chief product officer is extremely business savvy.
Yeah.
So the fact he worked at McKinsey is something he's not going to see in every other candidate that he's going to love.
Yeah. And so I think that's what got me the offer. And the reason I brought this up is you were talking about, thinking about things in hindsight or when there's failures or whatnot, but then it maybe opens a door.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think McKinsey was a failure, but it was definitely the wrong thing for me. Good luck, I'm out of here. But it got me into Datadog, and that changed my life.
Yeah. So it's funny. My experience, I think it's so similar in the aspect that I think the reason I got a job was I won over Amit.
That's funny.
So yeah, it's not shocking that it's like, you win this guy over. Okay. All right. So we got a little bit to New York. So you joined Datadog. I didn't realize you were that quick out of college.
Yeah, I was when I joined, I was like the youngest person at the company, and I remember being at.
It's funny. I'm older, so it's like everyone was younger than me.
I was 23, and I remember being at reInvent first year. I was 23 at reInvent, and I was at dinner with a bunch of like salespeople and customer success people, and when some of them found out I was 23, they like lost their shit. It cracked me up.
You feel people look at you as like a genius because you're only 23? And
no, I think
I don't look at you that way, for the record.
Was that?
That's it. I never looked at you that way.
No, good. I think I just presented pretty well.
I will agree with that. You were not an immature.
Yeah, I held my own. Like I was comfortable socially with customers in meetings. Like I wasn't shy, but I wasn't cocky. A little bit, but like I wasn't like trying to be a hot shot. Like I was confident and I felt like I could grasp things. So I think people were surprised because I presented like I had been working in the industry, for lack of a better term, when really I'm quick to pick up things.
Were you conscious about that, or just kind of who you are?
I don't know. Good question. I know I'm quick to pick up things. Like that's something I'm good at. Like I don't like being bad at things that I like doing or that I need to be doing. So like, for example, I started doing jujitsu like in August of last year. And like, what's that?
I didn't know. Oh, you just, all right. I was
like under a year, but I hate being bad. I love it. I'm addicted to it, but I want to be good at it.
Well, you will then, but it's going to take 10 years.
It's going to take 10 years. But
I know a ton about mixed martial. Like,
yeah.
My fun fact this might be a funny check-in too. My fun fact. So when you join Datadog, a lot of companies do this, by the way. They shoot out an email like, "Hey, so and so has joined," and then they wanted a fun fact. I told the recruiter, "Here's 3, pick one," and she put out all 3. So one of my 3 was I've cornered a professional mixed martial arts fight, which is true, but not because I'm actually a mixed martial artist. I was just very good friends with someone who trained and managed a lot of, professional MMA fighters, some who have become world champions.
Yeah.
And the guy who is the jiu-jitsu instructor at the gym, I became close with too. Jiu-jitsu is perfect.
Yeah, it's like an art form.
We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll hear about Daniel's initial experiences living in NYC and his thoughts on cultivating a successful culture as a founder.
All right, so you came to New York. Really, it sounds like not knowing much about it. Like, had you visited before, or
I've been to New York like twice ever before moving here.
Okay, so we'll just call it like a not heavily informed decision. Is that fair?
I mean, I don't think it's like
Not crazy. I'm just saying.
it's still New York, but yeah, I didn't know a whole lot about what life would be like.
Okay, so you got here. Like, what were your first like? We talked about it as like a person or whatever. Like, what were your first thoughts on what do you like about it? Like, what kept you here? Your company's here now.
I mean, when I moved here when I was 22, it was like college part 2, right? All my friends were here. Tons of people from college were here.
You also, you grew up around one of the other large cities in the country, but I've been to Chicago enough to know they're nothing alike.
No, I grew up in the suburbs.
Well, me too, but Chicago was the city. It's not like you couldn't.
My family and I went sometimes, but I wasn't in high school. I wasn't going out into the city.
Ever. Oh, well, that's how we're different. But
never. Like, I was sitting in McDonald's parking lots,
okay,
with my friends, or going to the basement. It was not. We weren't going into bars when I was 17. So I never lived in a city. I mean,
not lived. I'm saying you at least had some exposure to a city.
Oh, I was. Yeah, I like cities. I still like cities.
Yes.
And I like the organized chaos that is a city. And New York is the ultimate organized chaos. So
for sure,
moving here, and all my friends were here. Community was here. Tons of young people. There was this amazing organized, controlled chaos of, all these people and going out downtown, and just it was great. And then, once I joined Datadog, and not even a year later, I was working at the hottest tech company in New York that, for the most part, no one really knew about. Datadog's the most successful company no one's heard about. Maybe now, not anymore, but in 2017,
it's an interesting aspect.
From 2016 to 2020, it was the most successful company no one heard about. So I got to be a part of this amazing ride in the most amazing city, and it was amazing. It was like going to college all over again.
Yeah, I do agree. There was a big community aspect at that company that we all really valued, and how much does that flow down to what you're doing now? Do you feel?
It's interesting. I definitely miss the community we had at Datadog.
I'll say this to people, I don't have this, I don't have FOMO being on the outside. It's nostalgia.
It's huge.
It's I don't think this exists other places. I know it doesn't exist there anymore, unfortunately.
It was a point in time, and I think it's one of those things that I don't know if I'll ever have again.
Yeah, but so the question is, now that you it's different for me. I'm on my own. You're building a company, knowing that was part of success. Also knowing you're in a different time. How do you view that? How do you try to?
I think even if I did, grow Trackstar into hundreds or whatever people, I just can't imagine as a founder I'll ever view it in the same way as I did when I was.
That's a good point.
Just quote unquote just an employee at Datadog.
Not personally, but you do want the people there to feel that way, right?
I want the people there to feel that way, but like I don't think I'll, as like a founder, I think you view the whole thing so different. Or I have to imagine. Like you're building the culture for other people, but you're still, you kind of have this little like asterisk around you because you're one of the founders, right? You're the one in charge or whatever. Where like I don't think you can ever fully, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like or
you're not wrong. It's one of those like scientific experiments where the nature of you observing it changes it.
It's a little bit like that. So like I think I was an employee and part of the culture, and I don't think and it was a point in time where it was the pre-COVID. It was epic company, epic growth. I was in my 20s. I just think it was
yeah, no, that's true. So here's like, I'm trying to boil down this question. I think I got it. Coming from knowing that culture is part of success, how are you as the founder trying to instill a successful culture?
I think I'm too early to answer that.
Okay.
Like we're just like, we just feel like we're so scrappy, just like still trying to get it to work. And we're just at a point where we want to get to be like default alive as a company. Like we're
default alive. I love that.
That's still a lot for Y-Combinator. Like that's so like I'm worried about like runway and like closing customers to and so like yes, I'm like thinking about culture a little bit, and like right now that comes just with hiring good people. Like the people you hire are good humans.
I'm not saying this is what lessons did you learn that you're applying now?
So I guess you're right. It's at a micro scale. It's at a micro scale. Like I kind of take back that I'm not thinking about it, but it's at such a different scale. It's hiring good people. It's how do we share ideas and feel heard, and like what type of language do we use when we communicate? We're not like oh shit. Like we don't do this for fuck. Like none of that, right? It's like bring us together.
Figure it out. Yeah,
like let's do this for this customer. Like this is gonna be great. So it's instilling like that sense of optimism, and I think that's the main thing we're doing. And
what's funny too is I hear you by saying you're not doing something that I think is kind of important, which is you're not dictating how other people should act, should be. You're just creating an environment for them to be themselves.
No, I don't know how to do that.
No, you would not. That's what I'm saying. It's like you're not saying it because you're not even aware, I feel maybe. But like knowing you and hearing what you're saying, it's like you're not, it's not that you're not paying attention to it. It's that you're not forcing it upon people. You're hiring people that will add to a good soup or whatever, if we want to say, and letting it, just kind of be what it is.
Yeah. I wouldn't know how to do it. And yeah, I think that's exactly right.
There's one thing I learned there about, we talked about hiring before, but like a very important thing, I think I've said this maybe on the podcast before, is how you should be scrutinizing who you're hiring to a very high degree. Get the right people in. Once you get them in, kind of leave them the fuck alone to do it their way and figure it. Like if you hire the right people and treat them the right way, what you get back is huge. And that's what I was saying. Like I would identify who would vibe with kind of that aspect of it. I'm not saying I won't be here to help you. Just, I'm not going to tell you how to be successful at this job. Like the way to be successful is figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm hiring people that are down to figure it out.
Yeah. I think that's really spot on. And my co-founder and I both default trust people, right? There's people, you have to earn my trust, right? I'm the opposite. We're the opposite. Like we are bringing people in that we're going to trust, who know things that we don't, or look at things the way we don't. And that's what we want. And you have our trust and our blessing or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's okay to like, as long as you don't just hire, throw a dart and hire that person.
No, of course
trust
not.
them. Then
No, of course not.
you hire the right person. Yeah, you gotta trust them.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, two quick questions before we leave. We like to ask everybody. One should be easier. What is your favorite thing in New York? This can be literally anything. Your favorite pizza place, or something more less tangible about the city, or whatever.
It's a real question. One of the main reasons I didn't like SF was how homogenous it felt. Like that summer, it was all tech, people talking about tech. Everyone worked in tech. There's something to be said about that, and it is a hub, and maybe there's something about that, and that having your tech company there is beneficial because there's all this talent or whatnot. But from a personal preference, I didn't want that to be my entire life and the only things that I was talking about, the only people. And so one of the things that I love about New York is how not homogenous, how heterogeneous it is, and how many different types of people and walks of life and you see day to day. And the people you can interact with and meet, and what that brings to the city, right? And art and culture and food and all of those things you were kind of saying, hey, maybe it's your favorite.
No, it's funny. You see me laughing because I've asked this question of everyone on the show, and I thought it would be taken like I'd learned about a new sandwich spot or something.
Yeah.
At least so far, everyone, and including myself, has said this aspect of the city.
I mean, it's why it's the best city in the world.
It's the people. There's all different types of people.
New York's not the best city in the world because of its pizza or because of Broadway. It has those things because of the different types of people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. It has the best theater. Exactly.
Yeah.
It has the best pizza and the best Broadway and the best Italian food, the best whatever, because of the people and how many different types of people there are.
I think, too, one thing we've uncovered by talking about this is I also think that this is it's well known this is not an easy place to survive even, right? So not only does it attract people of all different backgrounds or whatever, but it also filters out, and the ones who survive here are kind of really good at what they do, really scrappy. So while the representation is very diverse, it's it is a lot of, you're not going to get the guy who makes mediocre pizza that lives here for 30 years. New York's not going to tolerate that. You know what I mean?
I think
it does rise to the top kind of.
It kind of does because, the rent is so damn high if you're not selling pizzas.
No, I just mean it's also it's not as, no offense to the West Coast or anything, but their style is more laid back. New York's hectic as shit.
I think the people that end up staying here the longest or loving it the most have community. I think if you have some community, whether it's a close group of friends or work or whatever it is, you're gonna thrive here.
Yeah.
But I think if you don't know a lot of people, or you moved here alone or something, it's really hard.
Yeah, it's
right. Even though there's millions of people, that's when I think you can feel so lonely because there's millions of people here, and I don't have community. So I think if you have community here, doesn't matter what you're doing, you can.
That's fair. Okay, so the other question we like to ask is, how do you find, or what role do you think luck plays in success?
It's funny. I think about this a lot.
Me too.
Yeah, because I feel so lucky. Sure, I worked hard, but I didn't work any harder than the next person. I think partially it's luck in a pure sense, but I think people don't always people attribute things to luck when it's actually using your skills and using it at the right time.
Yeah, seizing opportunity.
It's seizing opportunity that you might view as luck, but in reality, it's not. So,
preparedness.
Yeah, luck favors the prepared is basically the quote you just said. And is it luck that my friend called me to ask for equity advice, and that's how I ended up starting my company. One could say yes, or one could say no. Like, I had the background, and that's why I was called. Right? It wasn't just luck.
Yeah, he didn't start dialing random numbers.
So in a way, it's serendipitous and it does feel random or lucky, but there are definitely things that I did and have a background in that set me up, and I seized some
I
opportunities.
feel a little bit like it's how I agree with what you're saying, like what you were saying before about the chances of the company are about survival. Like, luck is a lot about, it's kind of like this definitely is a quote, but I don't know, I'll misquote it, but it's like the more lucky I am, the more lucky I get, something like that, where it's like, yeah, it piles on. It's a snowball downhill, mostly because of it's just stacking opportunity.
Yeah.
Because I do understand what you're saying. Like, were you lucky the guy called you?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's what we said, and I think there's also there's like overnight sensation, the overnight success that you see and think, oh my God, they got so lucky, or where did they come from? And when you actually look behind the scenes, like, it's just a long.
Dude, that's what my book's about entirely.
It's just a long road of like little things, and the actor that you think is an overnight success was waiting tables and doing off Broadway for 10 years. Or
that was their thousandth audition, and they didn't stop your earlier
so
point.
I think it's a combination of all these things, and if you swing your bat enough, eventually, I've used that expression a few times, but eventually you're going to get a hit. And
I think that advice is it's like it's good general advice to people that you assume are capable. What I've seen is like it's dangerous advice for people who need to get their skills up first.
You can go try to start a company, but you're going to get some pretty quick feedback because it's not going to work.
Yeah, but you need to learn from that feedback, otherwise you're going to fail again.
Yeah. I think there's such a difference though between like working at a company versus starting a company, because
for sure
the feedback is
personal.
It's not going to work. You're not going to get any customers. You're not going to get any investors. You're not going to make any revenue. Like, if you're not, I don't have a better, if you're not quote unquote good enough, or you don't have the skills, or like you don't have what it takes, the feedback is nothing's going to happen. You're not going to the business isn't going to work.
I hear what you like. You can't deny it. You can't. Oh, they're wrong.
Right.
Like, well, who cares?
Who cares? Versus at a company, at a corporation, it's there's subjectivity and there's politics and there's you have a role and your role is to like produce something, versus with entrepreneurship it's a little more binary. So I think I partially agree with you where you need to learn things, but like you're gonna know, right? It's
no, what I'm saying is you're in the latter group, so you look at it that way.
I think for most cases, outside of like very highly technical, specialized companies where you need a background in rocket science, or like you need a PhD in some science thing, I think there's such leeway in the amount of skill and background it takes to start a company. And that I don't want to say most people can start companies, because I think that's overgeneralizing, but I don't put as much emphasis on, or I don't think there needs to be as much emphasis on how many years of experience do you have working in tech or, whatnot, because at the end of the day, your goal is to build something that people pay for. And if you think you can do that, if you've only been working in the world for 6 months or for 10 years, who's to say which will be better? Like, it could be the person.
Oh, I agree. I think one thing the world does incredibly wrong is measure experience in time only.
Yeah, so I was just using that example, but I think
like how we were talking before, like I knew when it was happening that at least I'll give you the exact time period because it'll hit you better, but like between 2018 and 2019, that year, basically I was a one-man team closing a bunch of enterprise deals with new products we had just launched. I knew I got 10 years experience in 8 months.
Yeah.
This would take anyone else to do this many important deals. And again, it's not because I'm great. It's just the company's on fire and I'm the only one here to help.
Yeah. I think the message I'm trying to get is founders come in all shapes and sizes.
100%.
And like, I don't know what makes a good or a bad founder, or like,
no, I agree. I'm not trying to discourage anyone from starting.
Yeah. Or like how much experience you have, or like, I think sometimes it really surprises you, or it's unexpected, or.
So this is how I'm looking at it. Maybe I'm not saying it correctly. It's like how I was talking about luck or whatever. It's just the odds are different. It doesn't actually dictate the outcome. It just says, listen, if you were a product manager at a successful company, it might be easier for you to fundraise, for example.
I agree.
It does not mean the company is going to be more successful.
If you're a second-time founder, you're going to have a way easier time fundraising, and you're probably going to be more successful because you know all the shit already.
Yeah, but it's not guaranteed.
Not guaranteed.
That's all I'm saying. Is like there are certain traits that like increase the odds, but nothing is determinative. And much like poker, life just randomizes the stuff that does come out versus what is expected to come out, right? The world changes and you're on top of it faster than somebody else. Doesn't matter how much experience they have.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of equalizers.
Yeah. I mean, entrepreneurship is part, it's capital. It's why capitalism is, it's part of it. It's why America is amazing. Like there's a lot of biases and, it's not perfect, but it does enable people to come from all different places and start things.
Anything you want to like say directly to the audience before you take off about the company? Or...
I don't have any major plugs right now. No, this has been great.
All right. Thanks, man. Thanks for being here. Yeah, no, really appreciate it. And for Daniel's being humbled. If you want to look it up, it's trackstarhq.com. Honestly, I can say with no hesitation, like if you are in the e-commerce space, this is something to look into to get value out of the tools you're using. I think the number one theme I'd say with a lot of the companies we have on here is that this can save you time and money. So if that's what you're looking to do, check out Trackstar. All right. Thanks again. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Empire State of Grind. As always, I'm your host, Aaron Fisher. Special thanks to our producer, Brian Neiman. We'll be back with new episodes twice a month. Please like, subscribe, and leave us some comments. And as we say in New York, we out.